Hey there, it's Alex. I'm going to do another personal video. It's going to be it's November 12th, 2019. I wanted to talk about a dream that I had yesterday in the early morning. Um, I woke up and there was scenes in this dream where it looked like a certain kind of signal was trying to be sent somewhere. Um, I was on some sort of ship or deck or observation deck, and it looked like it wasn't necessarily a ship, but more of like something to do with like interlocks and atmospheres. It was very within this dream. There was a corrupt element in regards to certain things. This this interlock, it had like an observation deck, and on it it looked like there was like certain. Well, it looked like humans, but I'm wondering if it was spirit. And they were looking upon. It looked like space, but I'm wondering if it was a planet. I think that maybe it was. But it reminded me of Alien for some reason. There was something to do with like the themes and vibes, impressions of Alien here and there. Um, I remember there was a certain kind of feeling like we can't go into a certain kind of interlock or a certain. Some were getting upset about certain kind who were stuck within a certain kind of airlock, a certain kind of airlock that somebody was just sitting there, and some were scared and worried about them getting in. That was sort of part of the dream too. But another one had to do with this portion where someone's just like, it should be more. We should be sending more signals towards a certain kind. Some were trying to insinuate, I think, that these signals being sent had to do with psychologicals, had to do with a certain kind. One insinuation had to do with a certain kind of psychological in regards to Earth. Um, Another had to do with, I think, a certain kind of, well, another kind of psychological that was a little bit darker, I think. Um, well, that'd be why. Well, one of the things is that it sort of reminded me of a certain kind of archetype that's on this planet, humans. It's on this. It reminds me of digital. It reminds me of the color green. It reminds me of, and there was another dream earlier that they linked towards it, and it had to do with this certain kind of signal. Um, and again, there is themes where it reminds me of like Independence Day, that sort of stuff. But I don't know if it is. I think it's something else. I think it's something different. I think some people have been taking a look at films and thinking that it has to do with. Well, I think there's themes within certain films which lament upon something in a certain manner. But I don't know if it is what the film is depicting in the physical, meaning that it might not necessarily have to do with bad aliens, but rather good aliens. I think that what was one of the things that was sort of let know was that this group is good, decent in a certain context. That what they were doing in regards to certain kind of sending of signals or stopping of signals, whatever it might have been, that they were the good group in it for what's acceptable. I'm not fully certain on it, but it really does remind me of a certain kind of realism culture. It reminds me of a certain kind of hacker culture. Um, just a bunch of different things where when I woke up, the way they portrayed it, um, the way they portrayed it had to do with like, you think of like Osmosis Jones, you think about that mayor and like the like different blood cells and how there's like different kind of smalls in regards to the bodies. Well, as a psychic medium, I start to note that there is that sort of thing in a certain capacity, in multiple different kinds of ways. And the way they labeled it had to do with like, yeah, there is certain kind of interlocks and airlocks in regards to oneself to a certain degree. I think they were looking at mine and they were saying like, there's a bit of a problematic. We need to clean this up, maybe before something else. I don't know. And of course, if we're looking at Earth, it's like maybe we should clean Earth up first. I don't know, but again, depending on like what are we going to drag it on like for months, or is it already cleaned up, or is everything already ready to go? I don't know. And again, some are looking at, oh, but below certain thresholds it looks that way, but above certain thresholds it doesn't look that way. I'm like, if the interaction regarding some of us is below certain thresholds, what does that mean? All right, correct. Does it mean that we're experiencing some of that bad stuff that's been insinuated in regards to some of it? I don't know. But I think what I do know is that there is a culture in regards to a certain kind that exists on this physical planet Earth. And one of the things they were talking about Well, one of the things is that the way people are viewing it was low key, laid back, and the way it sort of segued in regards to culture was acceptable in a certain manner, at least in regards to physical earth-based culture. It sort of was labeled a certain way. And it reminds me of technology, it reminds me of digital, it reminds me of a certain kind of green, and sometimes a certain kind of white. Um, Multiple kinds of things to a certain degree. But there's multiple different kinds of stories within the impressions that some are looking at. Some are saying digital, some are saying nature, some are saying national, some are saying realism culture, some are saying story. So it's a little bit more than that. I think that it might be, I think that it's telling multiple stories in regards to what I think some were trying to say. But the dream itself was fairly scary. Some of the things insinuated, some of the things experienced supposedly in regards to some spirit. I had an impression that there was an angry spirit upset that they're still uh, in a certain area. I don't know if it's an I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's hovering outside. Well, some are trying to hook up and link a certain kind of story having to do with some that are outside Earth atmospherics. Some were saying that certain spirit that are inside certain kind of Earth atmospheric. The atmosphere. Imagine that the atmosphere itself is an airlock. So, what's going on with that? What does it look like spiritually? And what is the quality of life, regarding? That's one of them, but that's not the one. I don't know if that's the one that some were talking about. Another one had to do with a certain kind that got put on a certain planet where they were not where they were supposed to be, or not where some thought they were supposed to be. And so that sort of thing, it says having to have sent a signal, and this might be a smoke and mirrors saying, we don't have to send certain signals, spiritual signals. Um, and also some of it might be in regards to certain kind of physical signals. I don't know if that's the case of it or not. It might not be. I don't know. It depends. If the signal's decent, then maybe. But if it's not, then probably not. Or at least it shouldn't be. So I don't know. I just sort of got this kind of feeling that a certain kind of culture was being vindicated in regards to them being decent and good. It kind of reminded me of Underground as well too at times, but also not so. It also reminded me of a certain kind that maybe at times isn't underground. I mean, I've noticed certain kind of archetypes that are in the fame spotlight, certain kind of archetypes that are not in the fame spotlight supposedly, but spiritually potentially. So I don't know. I just wanted to let know of it. I know some are like, I think I did let know. I think that there are others who are letting know in a certain kind of fashion. But on my end, the darker of that dream scared the shit out of me. It really did. It was that sort of thing where what I experienced in the dream was almost as the person that was in the interlock that was just floating there. And they were kind of worried about a certain kind getting let in a certain manner by way of, I don't know. I don't know why, and one of the other things was that there was a certain kind on that observation deck. It looked like a dark, shadowy ship to a certain degree, but they were humans, supposedly. In a certain manner. And I think another thing they were letting know of is that there's certain kind of alien culture in regards to certain humanity. I think to a certain degree, or at least some of them are being labeled as such and shaped as such. So I think that and I did a lot of belief yesterday in regards to good that good aliens exist, that I believe in the good that Main Spirit Guides. And it's all done the way Main Spirit Guides indicated it's supposed to be, and the ways Main Spirit Guides indicated, those are some of the safeguards to a certain degree. And I think I had a certain kind of power on me in regards to my belief yesterday, in regards to certain peoples. Just that when I did a belief that it does more than what it usually does. Some of the stuff I did was believe that trees are good. That was some of it, because I think some of it has to do with trees, memory, potentially, and that's why. Because some of it's being interlaced. Some of the storylines are being put together. Like one has to do with digital, one has to do with story, one has to do with memory, one has to do with nature. So which one is it? I think someone saw green, and those are big ones in regards to green. Yeah, that group does remind me of memory. Something to do with memory. That's one of them. So what are the storylines, and what's the vindication information that Main Spirit Guides indicated? Because I don't know, every time I thought on those spirits, I liked them. Certain archetype, I always thought they were good, and I feel to be the case. I don't know, there's just something there. And when I thought about it in a certain moment, I thought, yeah, like my gauge down here has been that they are good. So maybe that there is a validity in that gauge to a certain degree. All right, then. And then they say you're bad, Alex. That's the case of this. That's what they say. Not necessarily. And one of the things I said in regards to it is, what are some trying to do in regards to certain conflicts? That sort of thing says certain spirit get a certain kind of notification or understanding. They try to affect the past by way of letting knows in regards to certain kinds of banners of fighting and conflict. Why are they trying to get certain banners to go after each other? See, that was not it, though. That doesn't make any sense. All right, fine. He does, though. Green and white, blue and black. That's what they say. It makes sense, I suppose, in a certain kind of regard, but also not so in another kind of regard. I like there's a blue and a black, and I don't know. I've never thought of it in that perspective before to be true. In fact, I feel like they're more underground. This was the case of this. All right, fine, more underground, sort of, to a certain extent, in a certain context. And what if they are? I like both groups to be true. It is what it is. I go with the truth that Mean Spirit Guides indicated and the information that Mean Spirit Guides indicated. So I don't know what to tell you. Regardless, I know been there where that sort of thing. It's like your banner that you like in a certain threshold is operating in a certain fashion. I dislike it. That exists. There is that sort of thing. But it's not just in regards to a certain threshold. In regards to some of it. Unless it is. I mean, there's that sort of thing where it's like I continue to move upwards, continue to be put in certain areas, so said to be higher up, so said to be in different thresholds. But then there's this sort of thing where it's like, well, if that's the case, then how is this all happening? How is this still taking place? How am I still, how is this process, being affected in such manners at times? And that's a difficult question to answer, I guess, but not really, to be true. Anyway, I don't know if there's a conflict between those. I don't know. I don't know if there is. I don't know. All right, then fine. Anyhow, I hope there isn't. I wish there would not be. That's how I feel about it. I like both. So, anyway, I don't know. I hope things are decent. I hope it's let know in regards to what Mean Spirit Guides indicated. Again, there's another dream in regards to it, and it has to do with this signal. Green lights behind it. It's spinning in a certain regard. It's on some sort of hill. Or something like that. And there's a certain kind of hum in regards to it, a certain kind of impressional audio that I hear at times. And some are trying to label it as a bad thing. And then, of course, that questioning as to why am I interacting with something like that if that's the case of it. It's like, Alex, why are you listening to it? This is the case of this. We have to make sure that everything's all ready to go. Why didn't you just make sure that I wasn't interacting with certain kind of things then? After the fact, Bob, maybe you shouldn't have access to that sort of thing after the fact. When that happens, someone else should take over. All right, fine. Well, all right, you know what? Specifically, if you're not my banner, Jesus. That's even worse. All right, well, correct. That is the truth. That is what you did. Anyway, I and other Mean Spirit Guides are advocating for what Mean Spirit Guides chose for us to advocate in regards to smart application, etc. To Mean Spirit Guides pertain to the signals that Mean Spirit Guides need in regards to smart application, etc. To Mean Spirit Guides need. There's a thing about aliens. About some people are using certain kind of defensives and spiritual to defend themselves upon certain perception, upon certain belief, upon certain energy placements. That rather just go the way of aliens don't exist, and we have a defensive here. We don't have to worry about it then. But if we can get enough going in regards to good aliens, then that can change in a certain manner, in a certain context. Good aliens that Mean Spirit Guides indicated. Good aliens that those that Mean Spirit Guides indicated, Mean Spirit Guides indicated. All right, well, so I did a lot of belief work yesterday. Not a lot of belief work, a couple hours worth. Two main subjects having to do with, some was, not two main subjects, multiple main subjects. Some had to do with believing in good aliens, that they exist, Pleiadians. That was one of the great things about it, is that there is let knows in regards to good alien culture that exists on physical Earth-based, all throughout it. Now, and the other good thing is that the aliens that some point towards, what some have called, a certain kind, they're not labeled as bad necessarily. It's more like a high science, to be true. A certain kind of high science. There is a bit of a gray area. That there's that sort of, I look at it and see a certain kind of, not neutrality, but like, not amorality, A lack of care? Well, it's not a lack of care per se. It's not apathy. It's a different kind. Apathy, some of it attached to certain kind of negative impressions in regards to it, but there's a positive in regards to it too, and not so. There's a neutrality in regards to it, a neutral energy, and some of the perception in regards to some of those. Well, anyway, all right, fine. You don't know why, because we never wanted you to say it. Let's think this is what the thing is. Light dual means for guides indicated in regards to smart identification, etc. Guides pertaining to letting know of good aliens and the ways in which they also need to pertain to the smart identification, etc. Guides, as well as letting know of certain defenses that certain kind utilize in a certain fashion, the way means for guides indicated. Well, you don't know why, because this is also it. Like, this is the case. You'd understand. There was a scarier aspects in regards to my dream. I don't know why I keep talking about it, because the whole damn dream was a bit scary. And the code that some were looking at, that someone said, there was this moment where I was looking at somebody, and for a second he was me. It was like I was saying it and he was saying it, and he was saying it in his regard when he was like, they showed like, well, and this is the case of this, and they showed this code popping up and fixing something, and all of a sudden someone's like, well, not fixing something, but then someone saying right after that code popped up and impacted something, him saying that it should be this, doing it more so. And then he said it, and then it would be this. And he smiled in this like Cheshire cat sort of way, where and I could feel the psychological energy on him. Psychological's like all of a sudden making somebody happy again in a certain manner. So I don't know what that fully means, what that fully entails, but it felt like a certain kind of message, and someone wanted me to let know about it in the spiritual, in a certain context. I don't fully know the context of how they wanted me to let know of it. I'm trying to let know of it, but it was things like that. Now, the thing on the shadow ship, there was this moment where there was a couple soldiers that were like, oh yeah, this is the thing of it, and it looked to be, well, those moments in military where you see certain kind of military in regards to, well, anyway. You can leave it there. You don't know why. So that's the case of it. Anyway. But yeah, I'm wondering. I know there's Swimming guides are advocating for what means for guides chose for us to advocate in regards to smart application developments or guides pertaining to the interlocks and airlocks that means for guys needed. There is one. That was the case list. There is another one that sort of reminded me was of planets. In space, planets, from our perception, they're green, green grass, like those kind of planets, and then space, that black, and there's a certain kind of theme that's played upon in regards to multiple alien films in regards to it. I think that's one of the storylines as well too. Great, just as long, well, I think identifying it and saying it can be decent and understanding that. I know that there's probably planets out there with blue grass and things of that nature, but grass is green on our planet. I don't know what that fully means, what that fully entails. And it might not entail to what some think it does. Earth is of those that mean spirit guides indicated in regards to smart getting etc. developments or guides, the way mean spirit guides indicated in the light. And they'll relay the main spirit guide information of Earth. And I am talking about physical Earth in the ways that mean spirit guides indicated. That's how I feel about it. I know there's Women's Spirit Guides are advocating for the best possible advocations that myself and others to Women's Spirit Guides could have done in regards to the cultures that Women's Spirit Guides needed and banners that Women's Spirit Guides needed, as well as others to Women's Spirit Guides, the way Women's Spirit Guides needed.